Professor Kuma here. We're in the virtual classroom. We're going to talk a little bit about audience awareness. So when it comes to audience awareness, this is really important for SA3. When we are analyzing another person's argument, it's imperative that we understand who the person thinks he's speaking to. Who does the author believe that he or she is writing this argument to? And it's very important, and I'll tell you this, the answer is never just anybody and everybody. Yes, anybody and everybody can pick up the page and read the words, but who is the author speaking to? Most of the time, there's going to be some kind of demographic information that you can come up with, okay? So, but I want you to think about it this way, and just try to answer these questions, because I want you to write a paragraph describing who this author is likely trying to speak to, okay? And this paragraph should cover beliefs. What does this author assume the audience already believes? What does the author assume that the audience already believes? Okay, and this is going to tell you a lot. Now, how would you know this? Well, let me tell you how you would know this. First of all, if I am speaking to you and I am trying to convince you to buy solar panels because they are the most efficient way to combat global warming, okay, if that's my pitch, right? Hey, combat global warming with these solar panels. Well, if that is my pitch, you already know that I assume that you believe that fossil fuels are causing global warming. Because I'm not trying to prove to you that global warming is caused by fossil fuels. I'm simply saying, hey, buy these solar panels because global warming is so bad and it's caused by every other kind of electricity, okay? The things I don't try to prove to you are a really good clue as to what I think you already believe. Okay? Let's try this again. Let's think of a different example. Perhaps you are I'm trying to convince you that you should use a certain kind of clothing detergent, okay? So a certain kind of clothing detergent is the kind you should use because this particular kind of clothing detergent is especially it's especially good for the environment. I guess I'm on an environment kick. I'm just coming up with these things off my head. Well, again, if I were to make that pitch, I assume that you already care about these things. Well, okay, think about the readings that we did. What are the two arguments? Well, take a look at those arguments, all right? What does the author not try to prove? Okay, and you can make the assumption if the author isn't trying to prove whatever point, then it's probable that the author assumes you already believe it. And what point are we talking about? The point that hinges, if it's the thing that hinges on the argument. Okay? So for instance, if I were to try to say to you, vote for me because I will do things that are good for the children. Well, the assumption is you care about the children, right? I don't have to prove to you why you should care about the children because I already made that assumption. And I'm saying, if you vote for me, that's good for the children, okay? So if you think about this, all right, so when it comes to, if you're making an argument that we need to get off of our cell phones because we're losing touch with each other and we're losing touch with our own humanity, well, the assumption is that the audience is likely a little concerned about that. It might be that the audience already was starting to wonder if we're losing touch. And if I'm making an argument that a person should grow their own food because we're losing touch with other people and our connection to our own food, well, it's likely that the audience assumes that those are values that I already have. So what we're trying to do when you read this, think about the values that the author assumes the audience already has. And especially those values that if the audience didn't care about this, the article would make no sense. The article and the argument would not be a strong argument. So, okay, so what are the beliefs? What are the values? And really this is the essence of your audience awareness. If you can come up with what are the beliefs and values that the author assumes the audience has, well, then you know what the audience is all about. And you also know what the author needs to speak to make this argument believable. Because if the audience doesn't care, if the audience, has certain beliefs and values that the author doesn't speak to, it's not going to be a strong argument. It's not going to be a convincing argument. So what are the beliefs? What are the values? Now there's other things you could look at as far as demographics. So sometimes we look at what's the age, gender, where does the person live? Is the person a city dweller? Is the person someone who lives out in maybe a rural area? Is the person belong to a specific group or an interest group? For instance, is the person an athlete, or is the person does the person really care about hunting, or is this person really into yoga? Whatever, right? The better that the author understands the audience, the better chances that the author is going to make a strong argument to the audience. So by reading the article, can you figure out any of these demographics? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But essentially we're trying, based on the reading of the article, we're trying to say, okay, what does this author assume that the audience believes already before they picked up this article? Because you got to remember, the author is making an argument. The author is trying to convince the audience of something. So whatever the author is convincing the audience of obviously is not something that they already believe, right? So we know that. Maybe they've not been convinced, or they've just never heard of it, or at very least they don't believe it. Okay, great. So we know what they don't already believe, or maybe they've not thought about. Well, what are the things that we assume they believe? What are the things we assume they value? For instance, if the author is making an argument that people aren't talking to people in their families, the families being kind of scattered as a result of technology, well, what do you think the author assumes the reader values? Family, togetherness. And that's why, if you believe the author's argument, you should make changes in your life, because if you don't, your family's going to fall apart, or your family's not going to be able to be as close as it once was. So think about the evidence the author gives. Think about the claims that the author makes, and that will inform you as to what the author likely believes about his or her audience. Okay, all you need to do is write a paragraph, okay, so 4 to 8 sentences about what you think the author thinks about his or her audience. Okay, you need who does the author think he or she is writing to? All right, guys, this is the challenge. Go ahead and get started.